don't know if you can tell, I'm quite uncomfortable. So I'm wearing this cardigan primarily because it's already dirty and I need some reason to kind of wear it before I wash it, so that I have a bit more of a good reason to kind of put it into the wash instead of just like I've been carrying this around to cushion my camera. And so I'm wearing it to kind of, I don't know, show you what it looks like, but I think you can tell it's just kind of making me rather uncomfortable. And I think the fact of the matter is, maybe this is not a very good shirt to wear it with, but also like, I don't know if you can tell, but it's really hot. So anyway, I'm gonna take off this cardigan and I'm gonna talk a bit more. But if you've seen a few of my other videos where I talk about clothes, you would know that I am not a fan of layers. Okay, this is so much more comfortable. So you know that I'm not a fan of layers, and for the simple reason that I live in Singapore and it's hot most of the time. The only time where I will wear something like this is if I'm in an air-conditioned space. And so I think the point of today's video, or the point of this video, is gonna be a bit about one kind of, well, actually no, I was gonna break it up into like at least 2 points, but actually no, I think the main thing is just having the courage to be what you are, or what you need to be or have to be. And I'm gonna start with a story about a particular project that I did back when I was in year 1 of architecture school. So there was a project where we were supposed to build like a bridge and a structure. So there's 2 different things. One was a bridge and one was a structure spanning across a certain distance. I forgot how much exactly. But so there was some rules and regulations for it. There was a certain distance that had to be spanned for the bridge, and then for the structure there was kind of like a square space that it has to like span over. And so it had to meet those criteria of being able to hold its weight over that distance, and also I think being able to hold the weight of like a certain number of like cola bottles or something like that. And then we were divided into groups, so some of us were required to make this structure out of paper, some out of I think purely paper, purely wood, and then there was one that was a combination of wood and string, so like a tensegrity structure. And I got paper, which was, I think I chose it. Anyway, the point of it was that like there was also a weight requirement, like a weight limit on how heavy the structure could be. So recap, there was some criteria for what this structure was supposed to do, a certain distance that it had to span. Let's just take the bridge one, for example, without using the square void spanning structure thing. Let's just use the bridge because it's an easy example. So for the bridge, there was a distance that it had to span. It had to be able to carry its own weight. It had to carry the weight of, I think, 2 Coca-Cola bottles. 2 Coca-Cola cans. And it had to be within like a certain weight limit of like, I don't know, less than 500 grams or less than 1 kg, something like that. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make this structure. I tried a bunch of stuff, and as my tutors would say, not enough, which would be a repeating theme, I think. And that I'm actually quite conservative in terms of what I try, the different things that I would try. And whether that's just a familiarity issue or like other things, I don't know. or like, whether it's a familiarity issue, then therefore something that I should change, or whether it's actually closer to inherently how I prefer to do things, and therefore it's something that I don't really want to change that much. I don't know yet. But what I do know is that I had a lot of sleepless nights doing that particular project because I had to fold a lot of stuff. So when we use paper, we were not allowed to use glue. It was purely paper, so we had to hold together by friction. And I had a hard time trying to get the thing to even span across that distance, let alone hold the weight of additional objects. And paper being relatively flimsy, you had to fold it. And there was also a restriction on the size of the paper that you could use, so you had to build the whole thing out of paper that was 10 by 10 cm. So you had to use 10 by 10 cm sheets of paper to fold or whatever you want to do with it until you can get a structure that spans that. So in my head, it was just a lot of limitations. I don't know how to do it, and I defaulted to doing something that, like, it's a folding method that is quite commonly used to build like swans in like Chinese New Year decorations. Anyway, the structure is not really the main point. I think the two main takeaways from it is, I think one, I was not very ambitious in terms of what I tried. I mostly only tried things that I knew would work because I think the limitations of everything kind of stressed me out and stunned my creativity, which is one. So knowing all these limitations and knowing them really well and having it in mind that I need to hit all these limitations, all these criteria, requirements, rules, regulations, whatever you want to call them, made it really hard for me to think of anything besides what I already know. And hence why the swan decorations used in Chinese New Year came up. And two, when I did submit the thing, I tried to use a structure that was within the weight limit. So I almost maxed out the weight limit, and when I tested it at home, it could hold the weight of bottles, the Coke cans, but then when I tried it during the actual assessment, it couldn't. And the feedback that my tutor gave me then is still something that I think about nowadays, once in a while. And what he said was, if your paper bridge needed to be heavier, then just make it heavier. And then I was very upset by that because I was like, you obviously put a weight limit on this thing, and now you're telling me in your critique of my project that, that because it can't hold a weight, that I was supposed to make it heavier. And he was like, if it needs to be heavier, it needs to be heavier. And like, I think the thing that really upset me about it was that there was all this criteria that was laid out in advance, and then now I'm kind of being told that like you didn't have to fulfill all of them, which one is something that is maybe obvious to other people that is not obvious to me. You don't have to hit all the criteria that's laid out. But I think too, the other part that was puzzling in a way to me was, why is it that the criteria of needing to carry 2 cola cans was more important than the criteria of not exceeding a certain weight? Why is it that my structure that did not exceed the weight is deemed to be poorer than a structure that can hold 2 cola cans but will exceed the weight limit? Because that was what he basically said with the feedback, right? It's like, if it needed to be heavier, it needed to be heavier. And of course, the ideal case would be a structure made of paper with the same method that I use. Let's say there's a thing that you can't change anymore, to be able to fulfill all the criteria. But then, given the fact that it couldn't, why was it that one was more important than the next? And I think the thing is, having thought about it for quite a while now, is that I think there is a function for that bridge, and the function of that bridge is not just to be there, it was to carry the load. And so therefore that was why that requirement was more important than the secondary requirement of it being lighted in a certain way. Because being lighted in a certain way is kind of like a resource management thing, right? Like you don't want to use so much resource to build this thing, but you need a thing to serve its function, which is to carry the weight. And so that's why certain requirements are more important than others. Which then comes back around to me realizing, which again perhaps very obvious to other people, that like all the rules that are laid out, they are not all equally important, that's one. And also that they don't all have to be followed. And you can in fact kind of not follow some of the rules that are not so important. And I think I never really thought about rules that way. Especially like growing up, I think I was very much a rule follower, not in the sense of like I did it to be a goody two shoes, but like I kind of see it the same way as I see telling the truth versus lying. It's just easier to remember stuff if I always tell the truth. If I lie, I have to remember like what that thing is. But what I found is actually that it's not that I can't lie, it's that if I lie, I need a consistent principle as to why I am lying. For that thing to be able to stick in my head. And what I mean is, a thing that a lot of people like to use as examples is to kind of counter like the whole, people who are autistic only tell the truth thing is like, for example, if you are in a house where, like, let's say somebody who's like maybe gonna, I don't know, punch up your best friend is at the door, and then they're like, tell me where your best friend is, and your best friend is like just behind you in the same house. Will you lie to this person? And I think the thing is, I would lie in such a case. And the thing that makes it easy is that I know why I'm lying, because I'm protecting a person who's important to me versus the truth. And therefore there is some assessment of what is important, some priority, some weighing of what's more important here. And so it's easy for me to remember because I think I would consistently come to the same answer, which is that I would put my friend's safety over telling the truth to this person who obviously has my intentions. And the thing is, I think technically a similar idea can be applied to things like rules in, let's say, the paper bridge project. But I think it has always been easier for me to just follow all the rules without asking which one is more important. Because unless I'm given a reason to, I don't usually think like that. And so, I mean, I know that there is a blind spot that I have. But also the other thing that it sort of brought up is that if the bridge needed to be heavier, you just need to let it be heavier. And I think having that courage to break that rule, so even knowing which rule is more important to you, it's a different thing to know what you're willing to break and having the courage to actually break that thing and stand by it. And if it sounds a bit silly talking specifically about this bridge project, that's because it kind of is. I'm talking about it more as a metaphor to life, I guess. Like if you take this story and kind of apply it to the broader context of life, I think there has been a lot of times where kind of in the same instance where I've kind of limited myself with the way I've approached the project. I've limited myself in a lot of ways in how I've approached life because of what unspoken rules in a sense society has. And a lot of my late 20s to 30s, like right now, is me trying to understand what rules are not important to me or like less important to me in the same way the assessment has already been made for the paper bridge. It's like, what is this thing that I need? For example, to be heavier if I'm a paper bridge. In order to do a thing that is fit for function in the case of like carrying 2 cola cans, what is the thing? What is the equivalent for me? And what is the thing that I have kind of shied away from doing because it would break some unspoken societal rule? And there's a lot of examples that I can think of, but I don't really want to talk about them right now. Just kind of want to present that story and let you consider it for yourself. Maybe you have something similar, maybe it's not the same kind of story, maybe it's a similar story to mine. But the reason why I started off with the cardigan thing is kind of because when I look back at old videos of myself, it's quite funny because I obviously tried other people's formulas. It's not the first time I've made a YouTube channel. This is like, I don't know how many, I don't know how many of YouTube channel I've made. I've tried other stuff before. Some of the early videos, I wore a hoodie over a t-shirt in Singapore's weather without air conditioning. And I was clearly sweating in those videos. And I was talking in a very, what is basically a very unnatural manner for me, because I was recently rewatching Dan and Phil's old videos, and I realized the way I was speaking was actually, in fact, I don't know, on purpose or just subconsciously, me trying to speak like them in those old videos. And if you go back and watch those videos, I think the pacing and the way they speak and the way they edit is very different from how YouTube is right now in like 2026. But the reason why I bring all this up is because I think even without thinking consciously at a point in time, the reason why I wore the hoodie was because people in the videos that I saw dressed like that. But what I didn't actively think about is it made sense for people in the UK, perhaps, or people in air-conditioned houses to dress like that because it's cold enough for them to need an additional layer. But it made zero sense for me to do that because it's so hot here. And that's kind of like the fit for function bit of it, right? The can you carry 2 cola cans equivalent of the paper bridge. And so I think a lot of the rules that I've kind of unconsciously tried to follow just, were just not the ones that I needed to really follow. So like, I don't know, I for example don't like layers in clothing because it doesn't make sense for me, things like that. And trying to apply, this thinking to different aspects of my life is something that I've been doing for quite a while now, I guess, and I'm still doing. And honestly, I'm just really happy that like I actually somewhat wore this, and so now I have a proper reason to go and wash it, because it kind of fell in the category of clothes that were like clean, but not clean enough to go back into the wardrobe. And it was not dirty enough to warrant a wash, and now I'm just like, I can finally wash it after it sitting at my desk for a month. So, yeah. I guess that's what this video is about. Alright. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye.